Dricus Du Plessis retains the UFC middleweight championship. He defeats Sean Strickland by unanimous decision, 50-45 on two cards, 49-46 on the third. I had it 50-45. But I just tell you what, not a very compelling fight. I think the styles of these two fighters do not make for much of an action MMA fight. The stats tell, I think, the story of this fight. The significant strikes were 147 of 314 for Du Plessis, 46%, 128 of 263 for Strickland, 48%. So a little bit higher number of significant connects by Du Plessis, better percentage by Strickland. Takedowns 1 of 2 for Du Plessis. Strickland did not have anyone, and that was it. It was a kickboxing match and not a very compelling one. And the great boxer Evander Holyfield used to always say styles make fights, and I think these two guys, their styles sort of mesh to blah. Let's be honest, this was an awful fight. There was very few compelling moments in it. Du Plessis did go forward the whole fight. I think he landed the more telling blows. He broke Strickland's nose in the fourth round. He landed a few hard shots, but for the most part, it was just jabs and nothing really significant. You see Du Plessis fight Adesanya. He gets the finish by submission. You see him fight Robert Whittaker. Really a good, compelling performance going down. And against Strickland, it's just these taut, kind of not much happening type fights. The first fight, there was controversy, UFC 297. Strickland went into that fight as the champion. Du Plessis won a decision in that one. I had Du Plessis winning that as well, but that wasn't a great fight. And the UFC made this fight as a rematch, and it wasn't a great fight again. So I hope we're done with that series with those two guys. Strickland showed a lot of heart after his nose was broken early in that fourth round. It was gushing blood, but he hung in there, didn't get himself finished when Du Plessis was going hard for that finish. In the corner after almost every round, Eric Nixick, the coach of Sean Strickland, was saying, I need more output. You got to do more. You got to go. Even after the fourth round, he said, you got to go for the finish. And you didn't see much change out of Sean Strickland. Those first 3 rounds were close. I gave them all to Du Plessis, but they were close. And depending on what you were looking at or where you were sitting, maybe some people would have given those rounds to Strickland. I'll tell you what, when I'm going out for the 5th round, if I am Du Plessis in that situation, I would not be comfortable. I would have been going really hard to finish that fight. And I just think it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, to be honest with you, the way it was kind of a dud. I think if it was if it was Khamzat Chimaev in that fight, totally different scenario. I think if it's Khamzat Chimaev, now there are so many other factors at play that I think would have made it a highly compelling fight. And I have to think that that is what the UFC is going to do. Du Plessis' next title defense will have to be against Khamzat Chimaev. If Chimaev does not get the title shot next, I don't know what is going on, because what he has done has been highly impressive. That destruction of Robert Whittaker he had in October was amazing. I thought that should have been enough to earn him this fight, to be honest with you. It did not. Let's see what happens going forward now. But I think Dricus needs to see somebody else in front of him. Du Plessis has a lot going for him. I have him ranked 8th pound for pound. He is a massive middleweight. I think he could easily be fighting at 205 pounds right now. And he has a lot going for him, a lot of different things that he does well. But it seems like when he's fighting Strickland, Strickland has got that good technical boxing. Strickland throws basically jabs, right? That is what he does, but he has a good jab, and he's tough. And that combination keeps him in fights, and it seemed like, Dricus wasn't able to find any kind of combination to break something open and to be able to land a shot consistently. You saw in the co-main event in which Zhang Weili took apart Tatiana Suarez and retained her strawweight championship. You saw her after the first round where Suarez took her down and basically held her down for, over 3 minutes. Wiley adjusted and figured something out. And it didn't seem like Dricus ever did that during the rest of the fight. And I realize when you're fighting the best fighters in the world, it's not always easy to do that. Um, I think Dricus is a superb talent. Don't get me wrong. I just was disappointed with this fight. And I'll go back to what I said earlier about Evander Holyfield. I just think styles make fights, and these two guys' styles do not mesh. Um, so kind of a blah middleweight title fight. Dricus Du Plessis still your champion. I will expect that Dricus will end up fighting Khamzat Chimaev next. We will see what Dana White and crew say when they want to make that fight. But I believe that, we will hear that be the fight that comes out next. The star of the night to me was really Zhang Weili. There was a lot of people that were kind of, for some reason, not giving her a lot of credit going into this fight. Tatiana Suarez might have had the best wrestling credentials of any female in MMA, and a lot of people were basing their pick of Suarez on her great wrestling credential, and I understand that. I was really torn. Who do I pick in this fight? And I kind of leaned towards Suarez, but I said I don't have a lot of conviction with it either way. I didn't make a pick on the fight because it was just like I knew that Zhang Weili had the better striking, and she pretty much had the better rest of the game, other than the wrestling. But Tatiana's wrestling was so dominant. But I'll tell you what was dominant tonight was Zhang Weili's takedown defense. It was phenomenal. Tatiana Suarez hits the first takedown attempt that she tries. After that, stuffs 14 in a row by Zhang Weili. That was really impressive. And she just beat her and bludgeoned her. It was just ugly at the end. Tatiana was barely recognizable. Her face was all swollen and gross. And she really took a ton of punishment in that. I think now we are starting to see Zhang Weili moving herself up to where perhaps she is going to start having people say she and not Amanda Nunes is the greatest female fighter of all time. I think she still needs to do a little bit more. She's on a 5-fight winning streak right now after those back-to-back losses to Rose Namajunas. But boy, I'll tell you what, she is looking good and she's getting better every single time out. It would not bother me in the least if the UFC said, hey, you know what? We are going to skip Manon Fiorot for the flyweight championship, and we're going to have Zhang Weili move up to 125 and have her challenge Valentina Shevchenko for the belt there. That would be an unbelievable fight, and it would pit what I think are the two best female fighters in the world right now. That would be a lot of fun if they did that fight. We will see what happens. Tatiana will probably come back, and I would imagine she'll get another title shot at some point, whether at 115 or 125. But I think the thing she needs to do after this fight is rest. Ordinarily, I would say when you talk about Tatiana Suarez, Suarez needs to be fighting and be active. But she took a beating tonight, and those kind of beatings will stay with you. And so I think, she needs to be out of the ring. Don't train for a while. Don't do anything. Just be at home. Just relax. Just kind of get everything back under before she goes back in there, because if she tries to come back too soon, it could be curtains for her. She's a young woman and she's only now in her 11th pro fight. But she took a real serious beating. And sometimes you don't come back from those if you don't really take enough time. Fortunately, she's young, and I think, the UFC will tell her. I think her management team will tell her. Her boyfriend, Patchy Mix, who's a fighter, I think he will also, tell her that. So I think we will see her kind of, maybe take a little more time off than you normally would think. But Zhang Weili was just absolutely brilliant in that fight tonight. So good on her. And I want to give a shout out to Rong Zhu and Cody Steele on the preliminary card. What a fight they put on. Just an unbelievable slugfest, back and forth, and a lot of action. The seats were empty, it looked like, in Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney, Australia. And that was really too bad for that fight, because those two guys really brought it, and they delivered a ton of entertainment. Imagine if that fight happened when the main event did, and you had the arena full and everybody kind of lathered up and ready to see some butt kicking. The place would have gone nuts for that fight. They weren't too thrilled with the main event, and I understand why they weren't, because it just was one of those fights. Dricus Du Plessis remains the UFC middleweight champion. Zhang Weili remains the UFC strawweight champion. Interesting show, some good fights, some duds. I was impressed by Taliesin Teixeira. That was a very good win. He knocks out, not that Justin Tafa is any great shakes. I don't think he really is, but that huge elbow when they were clinched against the fence just drops him and knocks him out seconds into the first round. Very impressive. There were some duds of fight. I was not all that impressed by Jake Matthews. Yeah, he won, but nothing. Gabriel Santos was impressive, but unfortunately, you kind of take your taste on the fight from the main event. And I just did not care for the main event too much. I think a lot of people are going to leave that show with kind of a sour taste in their mouth because of the way the main event played out. But Dricus Du Plessis does retain the championship. In the co-main event, Zhang Weili wins a decision. She retains her championship. We will move on to UFC 313 next month in Las Vegas. The main event there should be a good one. Alex Pereira, the light heavyweight champion, against Magomed Ankalaev. I will be back this coming week with a lot of content for you, so stay tuned for that. Appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoy the action tonight, and we will talk to you all soon. Be well.